$4.2 million. That's how much one Supreme Court justice allegedly accepted in secret gifts. And now, one Congresswoman is calling him out with fire. The number hangs in the air like a guillotine, slicing through the corridors of power where whispers usually rule. Washington is stunned. The marble halls that echo centuries of solemn justice suddenly vibrating with scandal. Reporters murmur in stunned disbelief. Clerks glance nervously over their shoulders, and the nation, glued to their screens, collectively holds its breath. In one corner stands Clarence Thomas, a man cloaked in tradition, wielding power few dare to challenge, a figure whose silence has long been his shield. He is the image of permanence, the embodiment of secrecy, a symbol of authority insulated by ritual and prestige. And yet, behind the stoic facade, allegations of lavish gifts and private luxuries threaten to unravel the very trust Americans place in their highest court. Across the aisle, a different kind of presence commands attention. Jasmine Crockett, raw, unflinching, a voice sharpened by experience, courage, and relentless honesty. She is not shielded by wealth, nor silenced by protocol. Her strength comes from the people she represents, from a sense of duty that refuses compromise. Where Thomas wields influence like a weapon, Crockett wields truth like a beacon. The tension crackles as Crockett steps forward, her words ready to strike. The accusation is explosive. Corruption, bought influence, betrayal of trust, a justice entrusted to uphold the law, allegedly compromised by millions in gifts from billionaires. The halls of Congress feel smaller under the weight of her declaration, the air thick with anticipation, outrage, and disbelief. Cameras zoom in. Live broadcasts freeze faces across the country. Every eye, every ear, every heartbeat turns toward this confrontation. But the shock is only the beginning. The real jolt comes when Crockett connects the dots, exposing a network of privilege and power designed to remain unseen. Her courage is unmistakable, her defiance absolute. She does not whisper, she does not soften, she confronts head-on. And the nation watches as a single, fearless voice dares to pierce the armor of one of America's most untouchable figures. But what she said next would echo far beyond the walls of Congress, leaving the nation divided and Thomas exposed. Thus, Supreme Court is more than a courthouse. It is the heartbeat of American law, the place where life-term judges shape the nation's destiny with every decision. These are the men and women whose rulings echo through generations, whose interpretations can redefine rights, liberties, and the very meaning of justice. Every opinion carries the weight of history, every vote a potential pivot point for millions of lives. Clarence Thomas is no ordinary justice. He authored rulings that loosened gun restrictions, including the controversial decision on bump stocks, devices that allow semi-automatic weapons to mimic automatic fire. In a nation still reeling from mass shooting tragedies, his opinions have real, tangible consequences. Families mourn while policy bends, and the echoes of these rulings ripple across streets, schools, and communities. This is power in its rawest, most consequential form. Jasmine Crockett understands what is at stake. This confrontation isn't merely a matter of ethics or gifts. It is about accountability at the highest level, about ensuring that those who wield power do so with integrity and conscience. Every dollar in secret gifts isn't just a breach of law. It is a potential influence on decisions that affect lives, freedoms, and safety across the country. Her fight is not personal. It is national. And the tension intensifies because Crockett isn't stopping at exposure. She is poised to draw the connection between the $4.2 million in luxury, the favors, and the decisions that have quietly shaped America's landscape. Her scrutiny threatens to illuminate a hidden web of privilege intertwined with rulings that have touched every corner of public life. And when she finally connected the dots, the country realized just how deep this scandal could go. Clarence Thomas stands as one of the most powerful men in America, a figure whose influence reaches into every corner of the law. He is a justice whose life tenure grants him unmatched authority, a man whose decisions can cement or dismantle rights for generations. For decades, he has been revered, feared, and largely untouchable, a guardian of tradition and the sanctity of the Supreme Court. Yet behind the gravitas and the marble pillars lies a story of privilege few could have imagined. Reports reveal that Thomas accepted lavish gifts and vacations totaling an eye-popping $4.2 million, most coming from billionaire Harlan Crow. Private jets, luxury trips, exotic vacations, and rare collectibles, symbols of opulence that stand in stark contrast to the austere impartiality expected of a Supreme Court justice. Each gift is more than indulgence. It is a thread weaving influence and favor into decisions that affect every American citizen. The hypocrisy is glaring. A man sworn to impartiality, a figure entrusted with interpreting the law without bias, finds himself immersed in a world of luxury funded by those with interests before the court. It is a betrayal of trust, a selling of dignity for dollars, a quiet erosion of the very principles he vowed to uphold. Every headline, every report chips away at the image of infallibility, exposing cracks in the armor of authority. The nation watches as the untouchable figure becomes suddenly human, flawed, compromised, and vulnerable to scrutiny. Yet while Thomas's story is one of power corrupted, there is another story quietly unfolding, one defined not by indulgence or secrecy, but by courage, integrity, and the refusal to stand silent. But if Thomas's story was about power corrupted, Crockett's story was about power reclaimed. Jasmine Crockett was forged in the heat of Texas, a place where resilience isn't optional and courage is measured in action, not words. From the neighborhoods she grew up in to the classrooms where she honed her legal mind, Crockett learned early that power often protects itself, while the people it governs are left to fend for themselves. She rose through law and politics not as a careerist seeking accolades, but as a fighter determined to give voice to those often ignored, overlooked, or dismissed. Her journey was never cushioned by privilege. Unlike the men and women whose wealth insulates them from scrutiny, Crockett carried only the weight of her convictions and the truth she refused to compromise. Every courtroom she entered, every debate she joined, was marked by a steadfast refusal to bow to pressure. She is a representative of grit, the embodiment of honesty, and the voice of a populace tired of silence in the face of corruption. Crockett's reputation is fiery and unflinching. She doesn't whisper her criticism, she projects it with precision, cutting through the smoke of bureaucracy and pretense. To challenge the establishment is to invite resistance, yet she welcomes it. Fearless, unyielding, uncompromised, she has stood firm against political titans and special interests alike. Her power lies not in wealth or connections, but in authenticity, a rare force in a world where influence is often bought, bartered, or inherited. Her story resonates because it mirrors the struggles of everyday Americans. Audiences see themselves in her courage, the persistence in the face of adversity, the refusal to remain silent when wrongs must be called out, the belief that one voice, when armed with truth, can challenge even the mightiest of institutions. She does not operate from ivory towers or gated estates. She operates from experience, empathy, and an unwavering moral compass. And now, in the halls of Congress, she stood poised for a confrontation that would define her career and demand the attention of the nation. Where Thomas had luxury and secrecy, Crockett had transparency and conviction. Where Thomas had protection from power, she had accountability and the courage to hold him to it. She was not a politician playing games. She was a sentinel of justice, a guardian of integrity, a symbol that authority must answer to the people it serves. Every eye in the room, every camera lens capturing the moment, felt the tension as she prepared to speak. She carried with her not just her own reputation, but the hopes of countless Americans who demanded honesty, fairness, and courage in leadership. The stage was set, the stakes monumental, and the nation was about to witness a reckoning unlike any it had seen before. And when the cameras turned to her, Crockett unleashed a truth bomb that Washington never saw coming. The cameras flickered to life, the bright lights of MSNBC casting a sharp glare across the studio. Melissa Murray's voice cut through the pre-show hum, calm but probing, as she set the stage for a confrontation that Washington had been bracing for. Across from her, Jasmine Crockett sat poised, the weight of truth pressing down on her shoulders, but her composure unshaken. Every eye, every lens, every heartbeat was drawn to her, waiting for the words that could shake the foundations of the Supreme Court. Crockett leaned forward, her tone steady yet fierce as she began to unravel the narrative that had long been hidden behind closed doors. $4.2 million in gifts, private jets, luxury vacations, exotic trips, and rare collectibles, all flowing from billionaire Harlan Crow to Justice Clarence Thomas. She detailed the timeline, the patterns, the undeniable reality that these were not mere tokens of friendship or courtesy. They were privileges afforded to influence, and they clashed directly with the impartiality expected of the nation's highest court. Melissa Murray pressed gently, probing the finer points, and Crockett answered with clarity and precision. Then came the inevitable pushback. Thomas's camp invoked the so-called personal hospitality exemption, a legal shield meant to justify the gifts as private, outside the scrutiny of ethics rules. But Crockett's eyes narrowed, her voice unwavering. She dismantled the defense piece by piece, highlighting inconsistencies, contradictions, and the sheer audacity of expecting the public to ignore what had been laid bare. Her logic was meticulous, but her delivery carried the fire of moral outrage, a combination that left the audience both in the studio and across the nation spellbound. The tension was palpable. On one side, a justice clinging to excuses, the walls of tradition and privilege standing tall around him. On the other, a Congresswoman armed with courage and conviction, representing the people and the principles they trusted would be upheld. Every word Crockett spoke wasn't just criticism. It was a fight for America's soul, a stand against the corrosive influence of wealth over justice. Her voice echoed beyond policy, beyond politics. It resonated with anyone who had ever felt overlooked, unheard, or powerless in the face of entrenched authority. The studio air seemed to thrum with anticipation as Crockett drew closer to the moment that would define the debate. She had laid the groundwork, exposed the hypocrisy, and shown the stakes. The nation was watching, hearts pounding, as the confrontation reached its tipping point. And then, Crockett dropped the line that would define the confrontation. Clarence. Thomas is corrupt. End of story. The words cut through the studio like a lightning strike, each syllable striking harder than the last. Clarence. The name itself, heavy with authority, now trembling under scrutiny. Thomas, a man who had long been untouchable, his legacy presumed untarnished, suddenly facing a reckoning, is corrupt. 3 words that dissolved decades of assumed integrity, exposing the rot beneath the marble facade. End of story. A punctuation, mark of finality, leaving no room for denial, no space for evasion, a declaration that resonated far beyond the polished walls of the studio. Silence fell like a dense fog. Crew members paused mid-motion. The cameras lingered on faces frozen in shock. Across Washington, reporters stopped typing, analysts leaned forward, and viewers at home instinctively exhaled, realizing they were witnessing a moment that would not be forgotten. Social media, still simmering with anticipation, braced itself for the inevitable eruption. The confidence that had once shielded Thomas began to crumble. Polished defenses, rehearsed statements, and the carefully constructed veneer of untouchability were no match for Crockett's unflinching declaration. Every excuse, every justification suddenly felt hollow. Where he had stood tall behind privilege and tradition, he now appeared small, vulnerable, exposed to the very scrutiny he had long evaded. And Crockett, she stood taller than ever, her gaze steady, her conviction unshaken. She was not merely confronting one man, she was confronting a system built to protect the powerful at the expense of the people. Her truth cut through the noise, resonating with a nation desperate for accountability, justice, and courage. But the battle didn't end in that studio. It exploded across America. The moment Crockett spoke, the digital world ignited. Hashtags trended within minutes. Crockett vs. Thomas. Justice exposed. Truth over power. Clips of her declaration looped endlessly on screens, shared by millions across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Memes flooded timelines, some biting with satire, others celebrating her courage, but all underscoring one undeniable truth: the nation had been shaken awake. Supporters hailed Crockett as fearless, a rare figure willing to stand unflinching against the entrenched powers of Washington. They posted reactions, op-eds, and videos echoing her call for accountability, cheering every word as though she were their own voice amplified. Meanwhile, critics scrambled to defend Thomas, releasing statements, spinning narratives, and invoking legal jargon to downplay the storm she had unleashed. The debate was no longer confined to the studio. It had erupted into every corner of public consciousness. Political commentators dissected her words with reverence and alarm. Celebrities lent their voices to the discourse, and even rival politicians, usually silent on Supreme Court matters, weighed in. The airwaves were electric, every network and news site racing to keep pace with the conversation Crockett had ignited. Analysts predicted fallout, pundits debated motives, and the public watched with a mix of fascination and outrage. The ripple effect was undeniable. What began as a single interview escalated into a national reckoning, a confrontation that exposed questions about integrity, influence, and the very institutions meant to uphold justice. Washington had been jolted, and the nation was listening, talking, and questioning like never before. But beyond the noise, there was a bigger truth America couldn't ignore. Jasmine Crockett's confrontation went far beyond one man, one scandal, or one Supreme Court seat. It became a lesson in integrity, a reminder that leadership is measured not by power or privilege, but by the courage to uphold truth in the face of overwhelming odds. Her fight illuminated the contrast between those who use authority to enrich themselves and those who use their voice to defend the people. The universal lesson was clear. Dignity, courage, and truth always outshine corruption, greed, and arrogance. Crockett demonstrated that a single person, armed with honesty and conviction, can challenge the most entrenched systems and expose the hidden forces that shape society. Her actions inspired millions, offering a glimpse of a democracy where accountability is not optional and silence is never a shield for wrongdoing. America's story is not written solely by the powerful few behind closed doors. It is written by those who dare to speak, who refuse to be complicit, and who insist that justice and fairness prevail. In standing up, Crockett reminded the nation that bravery is contagious, that truth has a weight that cannot be ignored, and that the people's voice remains the ultimate authority. And that's why this moment is more than politics. It's history. Jasmine Crockett puts Clarence Thomas on blast, and the nation is still reeling. From the halls of Congress to the screens in living rooms across America, her words have pierced the veil of secrecy and privilege, demanding accountability, where it has long been absent. This is not just a story of one confrontation. It is a testament to the power of courage, conviction, and the unwavering belief that no one is above the law. If you believe truth is stronger than corruption, share this story. Let the world know that integrity matters, that silence in the face of wrongdoing is no longer acceptable, and that the people have a voice that cannot be ignored. Every tweet, every post, every conversation keeps the pressure on those who would exploit their position, reminding them that the public is watching and history is recording. Join the movement for accountability. Subscribe, share, and speak out. Celebrate courage, demand honesty, and honor the leaders who choose truth over convenience, principle over profit. Jasmine Crockett showed what it means to stand tall, and now it's up to all of us to keep her message alive. The fight for justice is ongoing, but one thing is clear. When bravery meets truth, the world takes notice, and change becomes inevitable.